Hi everyone, welcome back to Radio Night Crime. Before you drift off, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. If you're enjoying the stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let's relax and jump into tonight's case. Story 1. In the early morning of May 18, 2012, in the dense forests of Uttarakhand, India, a forester discovered a horrifying scene. A family of 4 had been brutally murdered in a remote camping area. The victims were A.J. Mehta, a successful businessman, his wife Maya Sharma, and their 2 children, son Arjun, 15, and daughter Ananya, 13. Their deaths immediately shocked the public, but what was even more horrifying was that the murderer was A.J.'s best friend. J. Mehta, a 40-year-old entrepreneur, has always known how to balance his family life and work. Born and raised in Delhi, he is a model of hard work and perseverance. From an ordinary young man to a prestigious business leader, he met Maya Sharma in 1997, a gentle girl raised in a traditional family with values of filial piety, caution, and responsibility towards family. Maya dreamed of a happy home where love and harmony would always exist, and A.J. seemed to be the perfect person to make that dream come true. J. and Maya's love blossomed naturally, without noise, without ostentation, but gently like both of their personalities. That love was nurtured through simple dates, through conversations about dreams and the future. Both felt they had found their other half, and their wedding took place with the blessings of both families. The wedding was simple but solemn, and Maya's eyes were shining with happiness as a promise to be A.J.'s sincere companion for life. After getting married, A.J. and Maya built a small family, and in just the first 3 years they welcomed 2 children, Arjun and Ananya. Arjun is a lively boy who loves to explore, while Ananya is gentle and very close to her mother. For Maya, becoming a mother is a sacred thing, and she always takes care of her family with all her heart, creating a warm and peaceful environment for her children. Maya also has no regrets about choosing to focus on her family instead of her career. For her, the joy of every day is seeing A.J. and the children healthy and happy. J, despite being busy with work, still tries to spend time with his family. He often plans weekend trips with Maya and the children, so that everyone can enjoy the fresh air and strengthen family ties. Trips to Jaipur, Udaipur, up in the hills are occasions for A.J. to temporarily forget the stress of work and immerse himself in the peaceful atmosphere with his family. He always tries to make up for Maya with small gestures of care, such as preparing breakfast every Sunday morning or giving her small surprises. For him, Maya is a wonderful life partner and an indispensable spiritual pillar in life. Besides his family, A.J. also has a close friend from college, Rajesh Patel, who is also a businessman. Rajesh and A.J. are always together, overcoming challenges at work as well as sharing happy moments in life. Rajesh often visits A.J.'s house on weekends, bringing a happy atmosphere and laughter to the whole family. For A.J., Rajesh is not only a friend but also a brother, someone who can share everything without hiding anything. Maya also loves Rajesh very much and considers him a family member. On weekend evenings, the whole family and Rajesh gather together, enjoying dinner with stories full of laughter and joy. However, before meeting A.J., Maya had a deep love affair with Rajesh Patel. Rajesh was not the flashy or fiery type like other attractive masculine images Maya had seen, but his quiet and passionate personality had a strong attraction. They met when Maya was young, when her heart was innocent, free from all responsibilities and family pressures. They dreamed of a future together, giving each other sweet promises. Rajesh and Maya understood each other deeply, from their dreams of a simple life to their secret desires. However, no matter how great their love was, they still could not escape the barriers of family expectations. Pressure from her parents forced Maya to make a painful decision to choose A.J., a man her family believed would bring her a stable and happy life. With the weight of duty and love for her family, Maya broke up with Rajesh, although her heart was still heavy. Rajesh, although deeply hurt, did not blame Maya. He just smiled faintly, silently accepted and eventually married Sneha Kapoor, a gentle, mild-mannered woman, but could never replace Maya's image in his heart. Although each had their own family, Maya and Rajesh still maintained contact, initially only through polite, gentle inquiries like old friends. However, gradually those messages became more emotional, no longer just normal congratulations but also contained regrets. They reminisced about their youth, about the brilliant days they had together. Rajesh always tried to control his emotions, keep some self-respect for himself and respect Maya's marriage, but that closeness from afar made his heart ache. He felt lost in his current life and nurtured a hidden hatred for A.J., his best friend, but also the one who took Maya away from his life. The meetings between Rajesh and A.J.'s family became full of contradictions in Rajesh's heart. He visited A.J.'s house, participated in happy meetings with their family, sat eating and laughing, but his eyes sometimes strayed to Maya, full of longing and helplessness. That innocent pretense was a mask he had to wear in front of A.J., his heart always burning with jealousy and unspeakable pain. Maya could not help but feel tormented. She loved A.J., but that love was somewhat different from the intense feelings she had for Rajesh. Every message she received from Rajesh brought back memories that would never fade in her, making her heart waver and confused. But she knew she could not destroy her current family. Yet, there were nights when A.J. was away on business. Maya was alone with her phone, busy texting Rajesh. They exchanged words of comfort and encouragement, but there were also many messages filled with sadness and regret. As for A.J., he was completely unaware of the deep love between his wife and his best friend. He still innocently considered Rajesh as a real brother, sharing all the joys and sorrows in life and work. J was happy to see Maya and Rajesh getting along, because to him that only strengthened the relationship between friends and family. But he did not know that every time Rajesh came to visit, Maya's heart would flutter with strange emotions, and every time Maya smiled in response to Rajesh, there were also distant memories. Through those times, a terrible event was about to happen in A.J.'s family. On May 17, 2012, the atmosphere in A.J.'s group was filled with joy as they planned a camping trip to Uttarakhand. It was a much-anticipated vacation where everyone could escape the hustle and bustle of the city, enjoy the fresh air and reconnect with friends and family. Their campsite was deep in the woods, next to a small stream flowing clear over mossy rocks and a gentle waterfall creating a peaceful and poetic scene. Hoping to give his family a memorable time, A.J. spared no effort in preparing everything carefully. He set up the tents, lit a fire and chatted with his friends, with joy evident in his eyes. Rajesh, his best friend, was also present, along with his wife, Sneha. None of them could have guessed that, behind the cheerful face and smiles, Rajesh was secretly hatching a terrible plan, a plan that had been simmering in his heart for years, just waiting for the opportunity to be carried out. That evening, after everyone had enjoyed a simple dinner around the campfire and shared jokes, Maya stood up and looked towards the stream. She decided to walk to the falls to enjoy the cool air under the moonlight. When Maya told A.J. about her intention, he just smiled and nodded, trusting that his wife would have some private time in the quiet natural space. Rajesh realized that this was the opportunity he had been waiting for, and with a simple excuse that his stomach was aching, Rajesh quietly separated from the group and sneaked after Maya. Maya stood under the falls, the faint moonlight shining through the trees creating shimmering streaks of light. She sat on a rock by the stream, her hands gently playing with the water, feeling the peace enveloping her. But that peaceful moment was quickly broken when Rajesh appeared from behind her. Maya was initially startled to see him, but tried to keep her composure, asking him what happened. Rajesh, with cold eyes and a twisted smile, did not respond but only moved closer. Suddenly Rajesh rushed to control Maya. She panicked, fought back and screamed for help in utter terror. Maya tried to struggle, trying every way to escape from Rajesh's embrace, but his strength was too great. In a panic, she continued to scream, her cries for help echoing through the deserted jungle. At the camp, Maya's screams suddenly made Jay freeze. Realizing something was wrong, he immediately rushed into the darkness, running towards his wife's screams, his heart pounding with increasing anxiety. He ran, cutting through bushes and crossing slippery rocks, and when he reached the waterfall, he witnessed a horrific scene that made everything inside him collapse. Rajesh, his best friend, whom he trusted, was brutally humiliating his wife. Anger flared up in Jay. Unable to contain himself any longer, he lunged at Rajesh, pushing him away from Maya and throwing a punch at Rajesh's face. The two wrestled in the darkness, screaming and kicking violently. The two continued to struggle and fight fiercely while Maya, still in a state of disheveled and revealing clothes, panicked and tried to retreat, hiding behind a rock. Rajesh, in a fit of rage and panic, picked up a large rock lying on the bank of the stream. With a fatal blow, Rajesh smashed the rock hard on Jay's head. Everything seemed to freeze in an instant as Jay fell, blood splattered on the ground. Before Rajesh's eyes, his best friend was now just a lifeless, motionless body. For a moment Rajesh was shocked and terrified when he realized that he had just killed Jay, the man he once considered a close brother. But the fear quickly turned into coldness. He turned to look at Maya, who was trying to crawl away from the scene in fear, not giving her a chance to escape the punishment he had planned. Rajesh approached, his face devoid of any emotion. Maya tried to plead, hoping that the last bit of humanity left in Rajesh would stop him from continuing this crazy act. But his eyes were empty, full of determination. Rajesh brutally beat Maya, not giving her any chance to escape or call for help. Finally, when Maya collapsed beside Jay, Rajesh stood looking at the two lifeless bodies before him, feeling empty and exhausted. Rajesh was panting, sweat and blood covering his body. He turned and staggered away from the waterfall area, trying to regain his composure. He walked back to camp, already formulating a plan in his mind to cover his tracks. When Rajesh returned to the campsite, his cold gaze was fixed on the tent where the two children, Arjun and Ananya, were sleeping. In his hand, the fruit knife reflected the faint light from the flickering tent lamp. He entered, breathing steadily, but his eyes were still dark. The images of Jay and Maya collapsed in the forest seemed to sink him deeper into his own darkness, overwhelming any remaining emotions. Arjun was the first to sense that something was wrong when the light from the entrance of the tent appeared. The boy opened his eyes dreamily, and in a moment of shock he recognized the figure of his longtime friend standing there. But in his face and eyes was an inexplicable hatred. He tried to scream, but it was too late. The cold knife stabbed into his chest, cutting off his cry for help. In a panic, Ananya woke up to see the terrifying scene unfolding. The girl burst into tears and tried to crawl out of the tent, but Rajesh held her back. Her feeble struggles were no match for him, and her short screams fell into silence. The small sounds in the quiet night woke Sneha. She sat up and looked around, but only saw a dark shadow passing by the tent of the two children. At first she thought she was dreaming, but a premonition made her quickly step outside to check. When she approached Arjun and Ananya's tent, she was shocked by the horrifying scene that appeared before her eyes. Rajesh, still holding a bloody knife, was standing next to the two small, motionless bodies. Sneha's body froze. She couldn't utter a word. She could only stare at her husband's cold, emotionless face. Fear and shock made Sneha cry. She wanted to scream to run away, but her feet were glued to the ground. Rajesh looked at her, his expression devoid of pity or remorse. He came closer and whispered coldly, asking her to keep quiet and help him cover up this crime. Rajesh's threat was like a knife cutting deep into Sneha's fragile soul. She knew that if she did not comply, she too could be the next victim. In fear and desperation, Sneha reluctantly complied. The two began to clean up the crime scene roughly, wiping away the blood, hiding every trace of the crime to the best of their ability. Each action was accompanied by a feeling of horror, guilt, and indignation, but there was nothing else they could do. She tried to avoid looking at the two small, lifeless bodies before her, her heart filled with grief and helplessness. After cleaning up the crime scene, Rajesh and Sneha left the campsite for the night, leaving behind the bodies of Ajay's family in the eerie silence of the forest. As they got into the car to return to Delhi, Sneha sat next to Rajesh, her hands and feet still trembling, her heart filled with panic. She knew she was living with a brutal killer, but fear overrode any thoughts of resistance. The next morning, around 8 a.m., a logger passed by the campsite to check on the condition of the trees in the forest. As he approached the campsite, he noticed an unusual silence. From a distance, the abandoned tents with no signs of life made him feel that something was wrong. Coming closer, he saw blood trails stretching from the tent door to the edge of the forest. His guard up, he slowed down, looked more closely, and then a horrifying sight appeared: the bodies of Ajay and Maya, men and women he did not know, lying motionless next to two children. The sight was so gruesome that it left him reeling, his legs wobbly, and his heart pounding with fear. He immediately called the local police. Within hours, investigators were on the scene. The police cordoned off the area and carefully examined every detail. As they examined the bodies of Ajay, Maya, Arjun, and Ananya, they saw clear signs of violence and determined that this was no accident. The brutality of the victims' bodies suggested that the killer had not only intended to kill them, but had done so with great anger and hatred. Investigators began searching the area for clues. They found some footprints still imprinted in the ground and some bloodstains stretching towards the woods. These traces clearly showed the direction of the killer's departure, indicating that he had fled immediately after committing the crime. The police also found some signs of disturbance in the tent where the two children lived, indicating that they had tried to resist before they were killed. During the investigation, the police questioned and collected statements from nearby residents and witnesses who were present in the area the previous evening. One resident said that he had seen a couple leaving the area early in the morning, moving in a hurry and appearing to be in a panic. This raised suspicions among the investigators about the couple's motives. Evidence and clues gathered led to the suspicion that Rajesh and Sneha, who had left the area early in the morning, might be involved in the crime. The police started tracing them and discovered that Rajesh and Sneha had returned to Delhi. Through information and contacts, within a few days, the police tracked down the couple's hiding place in a small apartment on the outskirts of Delhi. When the police team stormed in, Rajesh and Sneha had no way to escape. Both were arrested and taken to the police station for questioning. Sitting in the interrogation room, Rajesh remained cold and silent, avoiding all questions from the investigators. His silence and strange calm only increased the suspicions of the investigators. They turned their attention to Sneha, who seemed to have been under severe mental pressure since her arrest. In the interrogation room, Sneha's eyes showed panic. The mental pressure and trauma from what had happened were unbearable for her. The investigators, sensing her mental weakness, skillfully exploited her and gently questioned her. Finally, after hours of torment, Sneha burst into tears and confessed the whole truth. She recounted, her voice trembling, that Rajesh had planned to kill Ajay's family since before the camping trip. Initially, she did not believe that he was really capable of such terrible acts. But when she saw him heartlessly murder Ajay, Maya, and then the two children, Sneha understood that Rajesh had completely lost his conscience. She admitted that she had to keep quiet and help Rajesh clean up the crime scene because he threatened her and she was too scared. Sneha's testimony made the investigators extremely angry and hurt by the crime that Rajesh had committed. They could not imagine that a person could be so cruel to the family of his best friend and even two innocent children. With clear evidence and detailed testimony from Sneha, the police quickly consolidated their case and officially charged Rajesh with premeditated murder. Now everything was clear and the two had to face the law. The trial of Rajesh Patel and Sneha Kapoor took place in early 2013. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense and heavy. The prosecutors clearly presented irrefutable evidence, including footprints at the scene, bloodstains, and detailed testimony from Sneha, all of which exposed Rajesh's ruthless nature and proved that he was the mastermind behind the massacre of Ajay's family. Throughout the trial, Rajesh showed no remorse. He sat silently, maintaining a cold demeanor, his eyes vacant. Even in the face of the suffering of the victims' families and the accusations from the prosecution, Rajesh remained indifferent, completely showing no emotion, which made the witnesses even more indignant and angry. Sneha, on the other hand, sat to one side, trembling, her face pale and haggard. She did not dare to look straight into the eyes of the victim's family. Fear and remorse were evident on her face. She knew that she had assisted in an unforgivable crime, and even though she confessed the whole truth, she could not atone for her mistakes. Standing in court, Sneha sobbed and recounted every detail of Rajesh's barbaric acts, from planning to the massacre of the victims, hoping to receive leniency from the court. Finally, after many days of trial, the court sentenced Rajesh Patel to death for murder and premeditated murder. This decision was made to protect justice and respond to public outrage over his brutal behavior. As for Sneha Kapoor, although she did not directly participate in the crime, she was sentenced to 25 years in prison for concealing the crime and assisting Rajesh. The trial ended in grief and sorrow from those present. The image of Ajay's family being brutally deprived of their lives left an indelible impression on everyone. Rajesh and Sneha pay for their crimes, but Ajay's family's loss will never be over. Story 2. The horrific case in 2003 in Bhaktapur village, Amroha, Uttar Pradesh, India, shocked the whole area. The victims were a wealthy and prestigious family, including businessman Govind Sharma, his wife Padma, 2 sons and a young grandchild. This was a family massacre with unprecedentedly gruesome and terrifying details. Medahori Sharma is the eldest daughter of the Sharma family and the pride of the family. Beautiful, educated, and well-mannered, she is a dedicated teacher at the local primary school. Teaching is not only a source of joy for her, but also a promising career. The Sharma family always believed that with her talent and current position, Medahori would choose a worthy person with a suitable status and education to build a family with her. They always expected Medahori to marry someone working in the education sector, a doctor, an engineer, or at least someone with a high educational background. Things began to change when Medahori met Rakesh Varma, a carpenter hired to remake cabinets and desks for the primary school where she taught. Rakesh is an uneducated man, having completed only the 8th grade, and carpentry is the only thing he can do to support himself. But Rakesh is more than just a hard worker. He has bright eyes and a sincere, gentle gaze, a strong and independent personality. These qualities quickly attracted Medahori. He had a sense of humor and was not afraid to express his opinions, even to someone as educated as her. He was not afraid of their differences, and this made Medahori find him all the more endearing. Every time Madhuri passed by the school's carpentry workshop, the two would greet each other, and gradually the conversations became longer. They soon realized that they had similar thoughts and feelings. She was surprised to find that, although Rakesh was not highly educated, he had a deep and honest view of life. Medahori was fascinated by the way he talked about his work, his passion for each piece of wood, and she was drawn into his stories of dreams, aspirations, and hardships in the life of a carpenter. Even though she knew that her family would never accept this relationship, Medahori could not stop her heart. Every time she saw Rakesh, her heart would beat faster. Her heart would flutter with an indescribable feeling. Rakesh, though hesitant at first, was quickly immersed in Madhuri's feelings. He never expected that someone like Madhuri could care for someone like him. They would meet after work, walk around the village, and talk about their hopes and dreams, things they had never shared with anyone else. As their relationship became more serious, Madhuri decided to tell her family about Rakesh. Her family's reaction was completely beyond her expectations. Her parents were vehemently opposed, even angry enough to refuse to hear more about Rakesh. They thought Rakesh was not worthy of her, that he could not give her a happy life. Her mother even cried and begged her to reconsider, saying that an uneducated, unpromising man like Rakesh would make her miserable for the rest of her life. Her father, who was always strict, warned that if she continued with the relationship, the family would cut ties with her. Madhuri is caught between two strong emotions. She loves Rakesh, but also does not want to disappoint her family. She once thought that love can overcome all barriers, but the strong opposition from her family makes her question her feelings. Yet she could not extinguish the flame of love she had for Rakesh, nor could she imagine her life without him. She felt like she was standing between two worlds, one of family and responsibility, the other of her own love and happiness. The secret affair between Madhuri and Rakesh becomes more and more suffocating as the pressure from her family increases day by day. The Sharma family, especially Madhuri's father, always considered her the greatest pride, the one who could continue to preserve and promote the family's reputation. Since she was young, she was raised to understand her responsibilities, and in the eyes of her family she was not only a daughter, but also a symbol of the future, someone who would choose a suitable marriage to strengthen the family's status and reputation. So when the family found out about the relationship between Madhuri and Rakesh, they saw it as an unacceptable stain. Whenever Madhuri tried to defend her feelings for Rakesh, the family became even more vehemently opposed. Not only did they forbid her from seeing Rakesh, but they also tried to prevent all contact between the two. They even threatened to marry her off to a man who was considered worthy of her, a well-educated and well-bred man. The Sharma family saw Rakesh as a poor, uneducated, and hopeless man, completely unworthy of Madhuri. Every contemptuous word and look from the family tore Madhuri's heart apart. She feels torn between love and responsibility, between personal happiness and family expectations. Madhuri feels lonely, gradually becoming isolated from her family, and in such moments Rakesh became her only support. He was the only one who listened and understood her inner struggles. He understood better than anyone the pain and pressure she was under. During their secret meetings, they not only exchanged words of comfort, but also promises and dreams of a future of freedom, where no one would interfere with their love. It was in those moments that bold and adventurous thoughts gradually formed in their minds. One evening, when Madhuri and Rakesh met surreptitiously in an abandoned house on the outskirts of the village, they began to share their feelings of helplessness in the face of her family's oppression. In anger and despair, Rakesh told Madhuri, "If it weren't for your family's interference, we could have been happy together a long time ago." His words were like a spark in Madhuri's mind. She began to think of a bold and dangerous solution to end all suffering. And then, the idea of eliminating her family began to creep into both of their dark thoughts. At first, the idea was just a whim in a moment of anger, a random remark to release pent-up emotions. But the more Madhuri and Rakesh thought about it, the more they felt that this might be the only way for them to be together without anyone objecting. They began to imagine a life where they could love each other freely, without having to endure humiliation and pressure from their families. Moreover, if they could take over the Sharma family fortune, they would have a rich life without having to worry about the future. Madhuri and Rakesh's meetings were no longer romantic and hopeful, but turned into serious discussions about a plan to eliminate her family. They began to discuss how to do it without being detected, about the right time to execute the plan. Rakesh, with his experience as a manual laborer, is capable of handling difficult and dangerous tasks. Madhuri, with her knowledge and wisdom, planned every step in detail. Every time she mentioned the plan, Madhuri felt her heart pounding, both scared and excited. She never imagined that love could push her to the brink of such reckless and cruel decisions. But the pain, the resentment from her family, and the desire to live with Rakesh made her reason blurred. During these times, Rakesh became the torch that guided her, the one who gave her courage. He promised that, once they got rid of her family's obstacles, both of them would live a happy life, without anyone's obstacles. However, on the night of July 15, 2003, Madhuri and Rakesh seemed to be driven by an irresistible force. The two quietly prepared everything, from the strongest anesthetic they could find to a sharp knife. The tools they believed would help them escape the Sharma family's control forever. Every step, every action exuded ruthlessness and meticulous calculation. Around midnight, when everyone in the Sharma family was fast asleep, Madhuri and Rakesh quietly sneaked into the house. They had discussed and prepared very carefully in advance, so there was no room for hesitation. In the kitchen, Madhuri prepared cups of hot milk, mixed with sleeping pills. As she looked at the steaming cups of milk, a cold expression crossed her face. She knew clearly that each family member would never expect that this late-night milk meal would be the final medicine that would lead them to death. Rakesh stood at the door, watching Madhuri's every move with unwavering eyes. He knew that this was their only chance to remove all barriers, to be free to live together without anyone to stop them. Rakesh's determination gave Madhuri courage. Both of them were caught up in the terrible plan they had created. They went to each other's rooms, placing glasses of milk by their beds. The peaceful sleep and steady breathing of each person seemed to stir up their cruelty. With unexpected care, Madhuri made sure that everyone finished their glass of milk. Her eyes became emotionless, unmoved, as she watched her loved ones fall into a deep sleep. The pleas, the happy memories, and the fond memories seemed to no longer be able to stop her. When the whole family was unconscious, Rakesh took the sharp knife, his eyes blazing like a predator. They started in Madhuri's parents' room. In the dim light of the room, Mr. and Mrs. Sharma's faces looked serene, unaware that they were about to face death. Rakesh's first stab went straight into the father's chest, precise and decisive. Mr. Sharma didn't have time to move. Only cold silence remained. Madhuri watched the scene, a mixture of horror and satisfaction, as if she were witnessing her own deliverance. Next, they moved to her mother's room. Madhuri crouched down beside her, looking closely at the gentle face she had once loved, then coldly raised the knife. Blood flowed out, staining the pure white bed, but she no longer felt her heart waver. Each slash was decisive, without any mercy. After dealing with Madhuri's parents, the two headed to the room of their younger siblings. Her younger sister, who had confided in her and shared many things in life with her, lay quietly on the small bed. The moonlight from outside the window revealed the child's innocent face. Madhuri trembled slightly, but when Rakesh looked at her, his determined gaze gave her courage. She lifted the knife and ended her innocent sister. Each slash seemed to erase everything they had together, and like every time, blood flowed out, soaking the floor, blending into the eerie silence. The last one was Madhuri's little nephew, only 3 years old, who was sleeping in his crib. When Madhuri entered, she saw the child's innocent face, and a moment of conscience arose. She hesitated, her hand holding the knife trembling slightly. But then Rakesh came and touched her shoulder gently, reminding her of why they had to do this. Madhuri closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and ended it all. The child never got a chance to open her eyes, not knowing that her own loved ones had cruelly taken away her little life. When it was all over, Madhuri and Rakesh stood there for a moment, looking at the house. The familiar house was now stained red with the smell of blood, and the silence was terrifying. They quickly cleaned up the traces, closed the door tightly from the inside, and left before dawn. They knew that this scene would be shocking, but no one could have guessed that Madhuri herself was behind this tragedy. The next morning, Madhuri appeared at her doorstep, like a heartbroken daughter upon discovering the horrific tragedy. She started crying, calling out the names of each of her family members, attracting the attention of everyone around. Neighbors quickly arrived, horrified by the bloody scene inside the house. Madhuri's acting was impeccable, with tears streaming down her face and heart-wrenching cries, leaving no one to suspect she was the mastermind behind this crime. The villagers looked at Madhuri with pity, sympathizing with the loss they believed she was suffering. Her eyes were filled with tears, her face pale and trembling in the comforting arms of her neighbors, making everyone believe that she was the only survivor of this terrible tragedy. The whole village was in shock and grief for the Sharma family. No one expected that the gentle and obedient girl like Madhuri would be the one who destroyed her entire family. With a painful appearance, she continued to build the image of a pitiful girl, but inside, her heart gradually sank into emptiness and obsession. Moments later, police rushed to the scene, and what they found was a tragic and haunting scene. There were clear signs of violence everywhere in the Sharma family home, with blood on the floor and streaks on the walls. The air in the house was heavy, filled with the stench of blood, making investigators shiver. Familiar faces, once known in this peaceful little village, now lay motionless. Not a single survivor. The first thing investigators noticed was that the main door to the house was locked from the inside, raising suspicions that this was not a break-in, but rather a domestic homicide. Suspicions began to form in the minds of investigators as they examined every corner of the house, carefully noting every trace, from tiny footprints left on the floor to drops of blood left on the bed frame. Initially, the police focused on external factors that could have caused this massacre. They considered the possibility that a stranger had sneaked into the house and committed this bloody murder. However, when they found no signs of forced entry from the doors or windows, they began to suspect that someone in the family might have committed the crime. At this time, Madhuri was the only survivor and claimed to be a witness to the incident. She sat alone in a corner of the house, with tears in her eyes and a pained expression on her face. The police began questioning Madhuri, hoping that she could provide useful information to clarify the case. While she initially appeared confused and devastated by the loss of her family, details in her testimony began to contradict her. Madhuri recounted that she had visited her home that morning and was shocked to find her family murdered. She said that she had not heard any noises or signs of anything unusual the night before. But when the investigators asked her about what she had done the night before, Madhuri's answers were inconsistent. Sometimes she answered hesitantly, sometimes she seemed confused, which made the investigators suspect that something was wrong. The repetitive answers and inaccuracies made them feel that something was wrong. In particular, when the police began to scrutinize Madhuri's call records, they discovered something unusual. On the night of the incident, she had called Rakesh, a man the Sharma family disapproved of, and the same man the police had heard about through rumors. These calls were not short, but long, repeated conversations throughout the night. This made the investigators wonder, why would a family member who had just lost all of her relatives have so many calls with someone who was not a family member? And why did she keep this a secret during the initial interrogations? When asked about her relationship with Rakesh, Madhuri tried to deny it, saying he was just an old acquaintance not worth mentioning. But her fidgety eyes and awkwardness betrayed her words. She began to appear nervous. Her hands trembled, and sometimes she even stuttered when answering. The strangeness in Madhuri's expression made the investigator realize that she had something to hide. Meanwhile, another group of investigators were combing the entire house looking for evidence that might prove their theory. And then they found a suspicious detail in the kitchen. The remaining milk cups had Madhuri's fingerprints on them. Not only that, but upon closer inspection, they discovered that the milk cups contained a small amount of an unknown powder, which forensic experts confirmed to be an anesthetic. Amused with mounting evidence, the investigators returned to Madhuri and continued their interrogation. At first, she tried to remain calm, pretending she knew nothing about the evidence they had found. But as the investigators detailed every little detail about fingerprints and drugs, she began to lose control. Beads of sweat ran down her forehead. Her eyes grew dim with fear, and her hands clenched into fists that trembled. After hours of tension, Madhuri could bear it no longer and finally burst into tears. In a choked sob, she confessed the entire cruel plan she and Rakesh had conspired together. She recounted the details of their discussion and planning, step by step, until the night of terror when they broke into her house, used sleeping pills to make her family unconscious, and then used knives to kill each of them. When she mentioned her young nephew, she sobbed, but no amount of forgiveness was enough to erase the crime she had committed. Madhuri's confession left a deep impression on the minds of the investigators. They listened to Madhuri's story of crime in silence with a mixture of horror and regret. No one could believe that a young woman like her could commit such a heinous crime out of blind love for Rakesh. Tears of regret could not erase the bloody image in the Sharma family home, which was once the home of a happy family. Soon after Madhuri confessed, the police quickly arrested both her and Rakesh. Rakesh, faced with the investigators and the undeniable evidence, could not deny it either. He bowed his head and admitted his guilt, but there was not a trace of remorse on his face. His eyes remained cold, without a ripple, as if destroying an entire family was a normal thing. This only added to the disgust of everyone around him. News of the bloody massacre of the Sharma family quickly spread throughout the region, causing outrage in the community. People could not believe that Madhuri, a girl who was always considered exemplary and loved her family, could become the mastermind of such a terrible crime. They talked endlessly about the case, trying to understand what could have driven a woman like her into this vicious cycle of crime. And now the two were facing trial. The trial of Madhuri and Rakesh in late 2003 was one of the most shocking events Bhaktapur had ever witnessed. A somber atmosphere filled the courtroom as members of the public, including relatives, neighbors, and acquaintances of the Sharma family, gathered to watch the proceedings. The villagers, who once considered the Sharma family to be a model and respected family, now had to face the heartbreaking truth the entire family had become victims of a brutal massacre committed by their own daughter and her lover. The prosecutors laid out every detail of the crime, from the meticulous planning that Madhuri and Rakesh had carried out, to every piece of evidence of their ruthless cruelty against their own loved ones. Every time the prosecutor mentioned details of the case, angry murmurs arose from the audience. People could not contain their anger when they heard about what Madhuri and Rakesh had done to the Sharma family, especially the indifference they showed throughout the trial. Madhuri sat motionless, her eyes cast downward, but there was no sign of remorse. Rakesh sat beside her, his face cold and arrogant. The indifference of the two accused added fuel to the fire of anger in the hearts of the people. They once knew Madhuri as a gentle, kind girl, but now she is nothing more than a heartless person, willing to destroy her family because of a wrong and blind love. As the trial came to a close, the judge declared that the crimes of Madhuri and Rakesh were unforgivable and deserving of maximum punishment. These words brought the entire courtroom to a standstill. Finally, the death sentence was pronounced, bringing an end to a case that had left the people of Bhaktapur in a state of grief and indignation. The trial is over, but its echoes will linger, becoming a haunting story of greed and betrayal, a sobering lesson about the price to pay for losing morality and family love. Story 3. In 2015, in New Delhi, India, a mysterious disappearance shocked the public. Arun Kapoor, 38, a promising young businessman, was reported missing after a fishing trip to Sarojini Lake. Initially, the case was considered an unfortunate accident. However, the subsequent investigation revealed an elaborate plan to fake his own death to escape debt and family responsibilities. Arun Kapoor, a promising young entrepreneur, whose success story began with great aspirations and extraordinary determination. He was born and raised in New Delhi, in a middle-class family. Since childhood, he always wanted to rise above the limitations of his family's circumstances. Arun studied business administration at a prestigious university in Delhi, thanks to a scholarship for excellent students. During his years of study, he spent most of his time learning from guest speakers, participating in business competitions, and interning at large companies. These experiences helped Arun hone his management skills and build important relationships. After graduating, Arun joined an investment group in New Delhi, where he quickly proved his ability with innovative strategies. After a few years, he was appointed to a senior management position, but the desire to start his own business always urged him. It wasn't until 2004, at a party hosted by friends, that Arun Kapoor met Priya Sharma, a smart and sharp interior designer. It was a crowded evening at a luxurious villa in the heart of New Delhi, where young, successful people gathered to chat and expand their relationships. Arun, who usually had little interest in social events, had come to the party just to please a close friend. He had no idea that meeting Priya would become a major turning point in his life. Priya stood out from the crowd with her confident demeanor, sharp eyes, and charming smile. She was chatting with a group of guests when Arun noticed her from afar. For some reason, he felt attracted to her. After a moment of hesitation, Arun decided to approach and started a hesitant but sincere conversation. Priya was immediately impressed by Arun's intelligence and humility, which was rare for a young businessman on the cusp of success. Their conversation lasted longer than expected. Arun was amazed by Priya's deep understanding and creative perspective on space and design, while Priya appreciated Arun's honesty and ambitious vision. When the party ended, the two not only exchanged phone numbers, but also promised to meet again to continue their unfinished conversation. After a period of getting to know each other and falling in love, Arun Kapoor and Priya Sharma decided to get married in 2005, marking a major turning point in both of their lives. Their wedding was held at a luxury hotel in New Delhi, attended by family, friends, and important partners in Arun's career. In the splendid space designed by Priya herself, they exchanged lifelong vows, starting a promising journey. After marriage, they built a home together in a spacious house in an upscale residential area. Priya, with her talent for interior design, transformed the house into a space that was both cozy and sophisticated. In peaceful evenings, Arun often sat at his desk working, while Priya was absorbed in editing the new design. They share small but meaningful moments, strengthening their relationship. In 2008, Priya gave birth to their first son, whom they named Aryan. Aryan's birth brought complete happiness but also challenged Arun's balance between work and family. With Priya's wholehearted support, Arun has maintained a remarkable career growth. In 2011, their family welcomed a baby girl, named Anaya. The house is now filled with children's laughter, bringing a deep bond between members. Their life, from the outside, looks like a perfect dream. Arun is a successful businessman, owning a thriving company in the fields of technology and real estate. Priya, although she has temporarily stopped her design work to take care of her family, still maintains her creativity and independence in managing the house. They often organize gatherings of friends and colleagues, and are always admired as an exemplary couple. Every weekend, Arun's small family spends time together. They go on picnics in the suburbs, or simply stay home to cook and play with their children. Priya is a devoted mother, raising her children with love and patience. Meanwhile, Arun, despite his busy schedule, always tries to take time to read stories to his children before bedtime. Their life is the happiness that every family dreams of. However, since 2014, Arun Kapoor began to show signs of stress, causing his and Priya's normally peaceful family life to gradually become disrupted. He was often away from home, citing the increasingly busy work schedule due to the large projects the company was undertaking. Every time Arun returned home, he looked tired, his face was tense, and the conversations between him and Priya became less and less frequent. At first, Priya thought it was just the pressure from work. She even tried to create a more comfortable atmosphere in the family, preparing delicious meals and encouraging Arun to share, but he always avoided it. The signs of abnormality began to become more obvious when Priya noticed strange expenses appearing in their joint bank account. International transactions, money transfers with unknown destinations, and bills related to services that Priya had never heard of. When she asked, Arun just answered vaguely that it was a business expense, asking her not to worry. His silence made Priya feel insecure, but she still tried to trust her husband. However, the reality behind Arun's change was not just the pressure from work. A later investigation revealed that he was facing huge debts from failed investments. Since 2013, Arun had invested heavily in a risky real estate project, hoping to double his profits in a short period of time. But when the market crashed, the project not only failed to generate profits but also left him with millions of rupees in debt. Rather than admit defeat, Arun kept his financial situation a secret, not wanting Priya or anyone else to know the truth. The pressure of his debt drove Arun to seek a solution that even he knew was dangerous. Through secret messaging apps, Arun began communicating with a woman named Gulshan, living in Uzbekistan. Gulshan, a mysterious figure, was said to have connections to underground financial institutions that helped move money abroad to avoid debts or clean up assets. Arun and Gulshan communicated regularly, and through her, he began transferring large amounts of money to foreign accounts. These transactions were sophisticated and difficult to detect. At the same time, Arun made a decision whose true meaning only Priya later understood. He bought a life insurance policy worth 50 lakh rupees, with Priya as the primary beneficiary. Arun explained that this was just a financial security measure for the family in the future, in case something unexpected happened. Priya, without any doubt, agreed to the idea, thinking that Arun was just fulfilling his responsibilities as a husband and father. But in reality, this was all part of Arun's plan that had been mapped out all along. He knew he couldn't pay off his debts and didn't want his family to suffer because of his failure. The life insurance policy was designed to protect Priya and the children in case he died. This meant that Arun considered the worst-case scenario, including leaving everything behind to ensure that his family wouldn't be affected by his financial burden. During this time, Arun and Priya's relationship grew increasingly distant. Priya could clearly sense the change in her husband, not only in his actions but also in his cold eyes and superficial answers. There were times when she thought about asking Arun directly about her suspicions, but every time she stood before him, she hesitated. Her love and trust for Arun made her unwilling to face the possibility that he might be hiding something serious from her. On August 15, 2015, Arun announced to his family that he would be spending a day fishing at Sarojini Lake, a peaceful spot not far from New Delhi. He said he needed to relax and get away from the pressures of work. Priya, though feeling that Arun was acting a little strange, did not doubt it much and supported the decision. That was the last time Priya and the children saw Arun. When night fell and Arun had not returned, Priya began to worry. She contacted him several times but received no response. The next morning, she reported it to the police, and a massive search was launched around Sarojini Lake. Arun's car was found parked on the shore of the lake, but there was no sign of him returning to the car. Initial theories focused on the possibility that Arun had had a fishing accident. Rescue teams dived into the lake for days but did not find his body. After 6 weeks of fruitless searching, Arun was declared missing and later presumed dead. However, unusual signs began to emerge. A customs official at the India-Nepal border reported that Arun's passport was checked at the border just a day after he was reported missing. This raised suspicions that Arun was not the victim of an accident but had deliberately disappeared. The police decided to reopen the investigation. When they examined Arun's personal laptop, they found that the hard drive had been replaced and most of the important data had been wiped clean. This was unusual, as Arun was known to be very careful about saving work-related documents. Further, the digital forensic experts discovered an unsent email in Arun's account, saved in the drafts folder. The email revealed that he had planned to travel to Uzbekistan, specifically Tashkent, with the help of a person named Gulshan. This clue led the police to focus on tracing Arun's financial connections. They found several large money transactions from his personal account to foreign bank accounts, specifically in Uzbekistan. Gulshan, who appeared in the email, was identified as a woman with connections to the underground financial network. She was suspected of helping Arun move money abroad and plan his escape. Priya, when informed of the findings by the police, could not believe her ears. She always thought of Arun as a model and responsible husband, despite the recent changes. Priya recalls Arun's strange actions before his disappearance, the large life insurance policy, the opaque expenses, and the growing distance between them. It all begins to piece together a clearer picture, but it only adds to her pain. Police also discover that before his disappearance, Arun had withdrawn a large sum of cash from his bank account and rented a small apartment in Kathmandu, Nepal. This suggests that he had carefully prepared for his disappearance. The passport used at the border also supports the theory that Arun had fled India. Investigators question whether Arun was truly in danger, or if this was a deliberate plan to distance himself from his family and avoid the financial consequences he was facing. What makes the case even more complicated are the legal documents related to Arun's life insurance. Priya was listed as the sole beneficiary, and the insurance money would be paid out if Arun was officially declared dead. However, with the new information, the insurance companies refused to make the payment, claiming that it could be an elaborate insurance scam. Upon further investigation, police found a series of surveillance images from Kathmandu airport, showing a man who looked like Arun checking in for a flight to Tashkent. The images were unclear, but investigators believed they were a vital piece of evidence. An international investigation team was deployed to search for more clues in Uzbekistan where Arun might be hiding. At the same time, Priya faced pressure from all sides. Family, friends, and the surrounding community speculated about Arun's disappearance. Many began to question whether Priya was involved in the scheme, especially when the life insurance policies were revealed. Priya endured suspicious looks and veiled accusations, leaving her not only devastated by her loss, but also isolated. Arun and Priya's children, Aryan and Anaya, were also severely affected. Even at a young age, they clearly felt the change in their family. Aryan, now 7, often asked his mother when his father would return. Anaya, just 4, began crying at night, missing her father but not understanding what was happening. Priya tried to shield her children from the painful details, but she knew the truth would eventually come out. After discovering suspicious financial documents related to Arun, the New Delhi police decided to expand their investigation. His unclear financial transactions and sudden disappearance raised suspicions of a complex fraud scheme. With the help of financial experts, they began tracing the bank transactions and discovered a series of transfers to an account abroad, specifically in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. Realizing that the case went beyond national borders, the New Delhi police contacted Interpol for assistance. Interpol, with its international network and ability to cooperate with law enforcement agencies around the world, became an important bridge for exchanging information and coordinating actions. Financial documents shared with Interpol linked Arun to several individuals in Tashkent. Interpol quickly contacted the Uzbekistan authorities to inform them of the situation. Uzbek police, under the guidance of Interpol, began tracking the financial activities and movements of those involved. They discovered that a man matching Arun's description had turned up in Tashkent with a woman named Gulshan. Arun's financial transactions were closely monitored. He had used several different bank accounts to transfer money, but a large transaction involving a payment to a luxury hotel in Tashkent caught their attention. The hotel, located in the city center, frequently hosted international tourists and was an ideal place to hide without raising suspicion. Investigators decided to focus on the hotel. They gathered information from staff and checked the guest list. Although Arun had used a false name, security camera footage confirmed his presence. At the same time, Gulshan was identified as a key accomplice in the crime, who may have helped Arun in the plot. After Arun was located, the Uzbek police, along with Interpol, planned to arrest him. However, they need to act carefully to avoid arousing Arun's suspicion and escaping. They decide to follow him for a while longer to gather more evidence and pinpoint his exact whereabouts. During surveillance, they discovered that Arun and Gulshan had moved from the hotel to a small guest house on the outskirts of Tashkent. This could be a sign that they had realized the risk of being discovered and were preparing to flee to another location. Time was of the essence. On a cold morning in Tashkent on December 5, 2015, Uzbek police, working with Interpol, raided the small guest house. The small guest house was located in a quiet, sparsely populated suburb, making it easy to make an unobtrusive arrest. The special forces approached from multiple directions, making sure that Arun had no chance of escape. When the door was opened, Arun and Gulshan were arrested without resistance. On the table, investigators found several important documents, including fake passports, airline tickets, and detailed plans for fleeing to another country. The presence of these documents further corroborates their plan to commit fraud and escape. After his arrest, Arun was held in Uzbekistan police custody pending extradition proceedings to India. This process requires close cooperation between the two countries, along with compliance with international extradition rules. Indian officials quickly filed a formal request and provided ample evidence of Arun's crimes. In the meantime, Arun tried to contact a lawyer and sought to delay the extradition process. However, with overwhelming evidence and the determination of both governments, he could not prevent his return to his home country to face justice. Upon his return to India, Arun was taken straight to the New Delhi police headquarters for questioning. The media quickly reported the incident, causing a public uproar. People could not believe that an ordinary person like Arun could have orchestrated such an elaborate plan to fake his own death and commit insurance fraud. During interrogation, Arun initially denied all charges. However, faced with irrefutable evidence, he finally admitted to his plan. He claimed that due to financial pressure and the desire for a new life, he decided to fake his death to collect insurance money and flee abroad with Gulshan. Arun was charged with faking his own death, insurance fraud, and misuse of public resources to stage a false search. Each charge carries severe penalties under Indian law. The misuse of public resources has also caused public outrage, as hundreds of rescue workers were involved in a bogus search that cost the state time and money for Arun Kapoor's trial in New Delhi in June 2016. During the trial, Arun Kapoor, after repeatedly denying his actions, finally confessed to all wrongdoing. He said his motive was the pressure of mounting debt. Incurring huge debts from failed investments, Arun devised a plan to assume his identity, obtain fake life insurance policies, and create a scenario to make people believe he had died in an accident. His plan was to collect the huge insurance money to escape his debts and start a new life abroad. However, the plan was discovered before it could be successfully carried out thanks to close coordination between international investigative agencies and New Delhi police. In court, the defense attorney tried to argue for mitigating circumstances based on the mental pressure Arun had to endure, but the law was unforgiving. With clear evidence and the defendant's own confession, the court sentenced Arun Kapoor to 10 years in prison for financial fraud and identity theft. In addition, his fake life insurance policy was cancelled, meaning his family did not receive any money. Gulshan was also not spared from prosecution. She was charged with being an accessory to fraud and aiding Arun in his escape and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. But on the other hand, these images left a deep pain for Arun's family. His wife Priya had to deal with loss and betrayal. She endured the emotional shock while shouldering the responsibility of caring for her children and rebuilding her life from the ruins left by her husband. The Arun Kapoor case is not only a cautionary tale about moral collapse and the dire consequences of greed, but also a testament to the effectiveness of the law in preventing sophisticated fraud. It is a reminder of the value of honesty and justice in society. The case is officially closed, but the lessons from it will resonate forever. Story 4. In a quiet residential area of Jaipur, Rajasthan, India, in 2007 a horrific case shocked the nation. The case revolved around Meera Varma, a single mother and her family, who were manipulated by a mysterious woman into horrifyingly torturing Meera's 10-year-old twin sons Ariv and Kabir. The case was shocking not only for its brutality, but also for exposing the terrifying consequences of superstition and psychological manipulation. Meera Varma was born in 1972 in Jaipur, the capital of the Indian state of Rajasthan. This city, with its magnificent palaces and colorful streets, is where Meera grew up in a middle-class family. Her family's life was not always financially easy, but her parents raised their children with love and effort. Meera was taught from a young age to live simply, to be hardworking, and to always appreciate what she had. Meera's gentle personality was not only an innate quality, but also trained through the way she observed and learned from her parents. Her father was a village school teacher who was strict but fair, and her mother was a resourceful housewife who diligently managed everything in the house. The image of her mother staying up late and waking up early, worrying about every meal and every outfit for the family became an example for Meera to follow. Meera, from a young age, showed her hardworking nature. She not only studied hard but also helped her mother with housework. In the morning she woke up early to prepare meals with her mother, then went to school happily. When she returned home, she helped her father repair old books or sat next to her mother learning how to sew. These actions were not forced responsibilities, but came from Meera's own devotion and desire to help her parents. After growing up, Meera Varma's life took a major turn when she met. Ravi Varma was born in 1970, a decent and kind civil servant. Ravi was not someone Meera sought out, but was arranged by both families. However, from the first meeting, Meera felt the sincerity and warmth radiating from Ravi. He was not the type to talk much, but every word and gesture showed that he was a trustworthy person. Ravi's calmness quickly created a sense of security, made Meera feel like she could rely on him in the coming years of her life. After a few meetings and conversations, Meera and Ravi got to know each other better. Although they came from different backgrounds, they both shared a simple lifestyle and respected family values. Meera felt lucky that the arranged marriage was not a forced obligation but a gateway to true love. She accepted Ravi's proposal, and their wedding was held in 1995. The wedding day took place in a warm atmosphere at Mira's family home in Jaipur. There were no lavish ceremonies or elaborate gifts, just the presence of loved ones and smiles on the lips of the two main characters. Mira wore a traditional red sari, her face glowing with the radiance of a bride. Ravi, in a simple wedding attire, could not hide his pride as he held Mira's hand while everyone congratulated him. The wedding ended with joy for both families. Laughter, traditional food and stories exchanged between generations made the day truly special. Mira, when she entered her new home with Ravi, carried with her the hope of a peaceful, happy life. Initially, their married life was peaceful. Ravi, with a stable civil servant job, always tries to bring comfort to his family. He takes care of Mira with gentle care, from helping her adjust to her new life to always giving her freedom in personal decisions. Mira, with her hardworking and meticulous nature, quickly took control of her space. She turned the small house into a real home, where every corner was lovingly tended. Their happiness was doubled when Mira gave birth to twin boys in 1997, Arav and Kabir. The birth of two children lit up the whole house. Ravi, who is not known for his expressiveness, could not hide his emotions when he held his two sons for the first time. Mira, in the moment of holding the two children in her arms, felt the true meaning of happiness. The first days after Arav and Kabir were born, Mira and Ravi's life was filled with laughter and joy. Despite the hardships of taking care of the two children, they never complained. Mira devotes herself to taking care of the children, from preparing each meal and each set of clothes to carefully rocking them to sleep every night. Ravi, despite his busy work schedule, always tries to help his wife. He often changes diapers, prepares milk, and never forgets to spend time playing with the children after each working day. However, Mira and Ravi's marriage, which seemed to be forever happy, began to crack just a few years after their wedding and the birth of two children. Ravi, once a caring husband and loving father, gradually changes for the worse. The pressures of his civil service job, unclear dissatisfactions in life, and the temptation of trivial pleasures gradually make him sink into alcohol. Initially, Ravi only drank a few glasses of alcohol on special occasions, but the habit soon turned into an addiction. After work, instead of returning home to his wife and children, he often went to bars, returning drunk. At first, Mira remained patient, trying to gently advise her husband. She believed that her care and love could pull him out of the quagmire. But Ravi did not change. In fact, Mira's advice made him irritable and angry. Soon Ravi's anger began to turn into harsh insults. He often criticized Mira for trivial matters, blamed her for the hardships in life, and even doubted her loyalty without reason. Long nights, Mira's cries echoed throughout the small house, but no one heard. As time went on, Ravi did not stop at words. He started to act violently. The beatings were frequent, leaving bruises on her body and wounds in her heart that were difficult to heal. But for the sake of her children, Mira gritted her teeth and endured. She doesn't want Arav and Kabir to grow up in a broken family, and she hopes that Ravi will change. However, those hopes were fading as Ravi's behavior worsened. After years of suffering, Mira realized that she could no longer live like this. She had to protect not only herself but also her two children from a toxic environment. One day, after a terrible abuse, Mira decided to do something she never thought she would. She filed for divorce. The decision was a huge turning point, painful but also liberating. Mira won custody of Arav and Kabir. At first, life for the three of them was extremely difficult. Without Ravi's support, Mira had to fend for herself and her two children. She worked day and night, taking on any job she could find, from sewing, cleaning, to cooking for families in the neighborhood. Despite the fatigue, her love for her children kept her going. During her ordeal, Mira meets Anjali Kapoor, a seemingly kind and likable woman. Anjali, with her petite appearance and friendly smile, quickly won Mira's trust. She appeared as a trustworthy friend, always willing to listen and share. Anjali often gave sweet words of encouragement to Mira, even promising to help her overcome difficulties. Initially, Anjali's presence comforted Mira. After years of loneliness and suffering, Having a friend like Anjali was a small ray of light in her dark life. Anjali always showed sympathy for Mira's situation, offering to help her financially and even occasionally looking after Arav and Kabir so that Mira could have a break. However, beneath her sweet and affable exterior, Anjali is a calculating person. Her promises are not entirely made out of kindness. Anjali's subtle persuasiveness makes Mira gradually become more dependent on her, both emotionally and financially. Anjali often talked about easy money opportunities, schemes that she thought would help Mira out of trouble. But instead of helping, Anjali gradually took advantage of Mira's trust for her own gain. Anjali, behind her sweet and lovable appearance, was actually a dangerous psychological manipulator. With sophisticated words and skillful persuasion, she gradually planted distorted beliefs in Mira's head, based on superstitious and heretical concepts. Anjali understood Mira's vulnerability after years of suffering and abuse. She used that to create a dependent relationship, making Mira trust her completely. One day, while the two were talking, Anjali began to allude to supernatural phenomena. She asked Mira if she had noticed that Arav and Kabir had been tired, irritable, or had nightmares. At first, Mira thought it was just normal childhood changes, but Anjali was persistent in her suspicions. She insisted with conviction that the two children might be possessed by evil spirits. Anjali recounts stories of families she has heard of being haunted by demons, stressing that if action is not taken, innocent souls like Arav and Kabir will be consumed by darkness. Mira, already tired and weak, was easily affected by these words. She began to look at her two sons with worried eyes, trying to find the unusual signs that Anjali had mentioned. Anjali's words became increasingly extreme. She claimed that the two children needed to be purified to save their innocent souls. Otherwise, evil spirits will take over Arav and Kabir's bodies, turning them into tools of darkness. Under skillful manipulation, Mira no longer doubted and trusted Anjali completely. The first purification ritual that Anjali arranged took place one evening when the whole neighborhood was quiet. She asked Mira to prepare a sacred space by turning off all the lights, lighting candles around the two children, and reciting strange prayers. Arav and Kabir, too young to understand what was happening, could only look at their mother in horror. Anjali, standing by, ordered Mira to follow each step strictly, claiming that any deviation would only anger the evil spirit even more. Initially, the rituals were limited to fasting for a few hours or standing still in a motionless position. But over time, Anjali began to demand more bizarre acts. She claimed that it was necessary to awaken Arav and Kabir's spirits by inflicting pain to expel the evil spirits. Under Anjali's direction, Mira subjected the two children to harsh punishments ranging from standing in the sun for hours to being forced to eat strange things that Anjali brought. The dark days continued as Anjali pushed Mira further and further. She asked Mira to use fire to burn away the evil spirit. At one point, Mira took a candle and held it close to Arav's hand, despite his crying and pleading. Kabir, seeing his brother in pain, was too shaken to resist. Mira, with a blank look in her eyes, followed Anjali's every command, believing she was doing the best for her children. The deterioration of the two children became increasingly evident. Arav, once a lively boy, now cowers in a corner of his room, afraid of every sound. Kabir, who had always been quieter than his brother, began to suffer from persistent fevers. However, Mira, blinded by blind faith, fails to notice this abnormality. Anjali, realizing that Mira is completely in control, continues to push the rituals more and more dangerously. For months, Arav and Kabir were imprisoned in a small, windowless room where sunlight never entered. The room was located at the end of the house's hallway, far from any sound from the outside world. The rough, dust-covered walls bear silent witness to the brutal acts committed by Mira and Anjali in the name of exorcism. Mira, who was once a mother of two children, has now become a tool in Anjali's hands. Anjali, with her psychological manipulation skills, has turned Mira into a fanatic, ready to do anything she asks without hesitation. Arav and Kabir, two children once full of life, were now emaciated, their eyes hollow and filled with fear. Anjali argued that the two children were inhabited by evil spirits, and that only through painful rituals could their souls be saved. Both Arav and Kabir were starved for days, fed only stale bread and salted water. These meager meals were not enough to sustain the children, and they became increasingly weak. Anjali did not stop at starvation. She asked Meera to use fire to cleanse the evil spirits from Arav and Kabir's bodies. Small burns initially appeared on the children's hands and feet, but over time the extent of the injuries expanded. Arav, the older boy, often suffered more severe pain because Anjali claimed that his demons were more stubborn. Kabir, though younger, was not spared from the violence committed in the name of salvation. The cries of the two children echoed through the silent walls, but no one heard them. Meera's house is located deep in a quiet neighborhood where people rarely pay attention to what goes on inside. The tragedy comes to a head when Anjali decides to perform a bizarre ritual that she claims will completely free the two children from evil spirits. She asked Meera to cut a piece of flesh from Arav's body to use as a sacrificial offering. Meera, completely controlled by blind faith and fear, followed Anjali's orders. The Arav, despite his pain and pleading with his mother to stop, could not escape the clutches of the mother he once loved and trusted. Kabir, watching his brother suffer such horrific acts, could only cower in the corner of the room. The boy did not dare to say a word, but his panic-filled eyes said it all. As the days passed, both children sank deeper into despair, not knowing if they would survive the coming days. The unusual signs began to catch the attention of Rajesh Sharma, a neighbor who lived nearby. Rajesh, a middle-aged technician who had a habit of observing his surroundings through his security camera system, noticed Meera's house. He noticed the unusual silence from the house, which used to be filled with the laughter of children. One night, Rajesh accidentally heard a faint scream coming from Meera's house. At first he thought he had misheard, but the repeated sounds in the following nights made it impossible for him to ignore. Rajesh began adjusting the camera angle to observe Meera's gait. Through the camera image, Rajesh saw things that made him suspicious. He noticed Anjali, who frequently came to Meera's house, carrying strange items. Once, Rajesh saw Anjali and Meera dragging two children from the car into the house. Arav and Kabir looked exhausted, too weak to walk on their own, and were practically dragged through the door. The strange signs could not be ignored. Rajesh decided to examine the camera footage more closely. One night, as the camera feed updated, Rajesh witnessed a shocking sight. Anjali and Meera were carrying things into the house that he couldn't immediately identify. Then, a noise came from inside the house that was louder than usual, though Rajesh couldn't make out what it was. Rajesh's instincts told him that something was terribly wrong. He felt it was his responsibility to do something to save the children he had seen playing in his yard a few years ago. Rajesh began recording the video footage from the camera and prepared to take action. Before going any further, however, Rajesh decided to continue observing to be sure of what he was thinking. Over the following nights, Anjali and Meera were caught on camera entering the house with furtive glances, carrying large bags and items whose purpose Rajesh could not understand. Small details like Meera's pale face and Anjali's odd behavior made Rajesh increasingly suspicious. One day Rajesh decided to monitor the outside of the house, trying to listen for any sound that might answer his questions. In the eerie silence of the night, he heard faint sobbing coming from the walled house. Rajesh's anxiety turned to terror. He realized that he could not delay any longer as time might be running out for the children inside the house. Rajesh began to make plans, knowing that he had to find a way to bring this to light before it was too late. Rajesh immediately reported the matter to the police after viewing the security camera footage. The images clearly showed the two children being dragged into the house in an emaciated state, along with the suspicious actions of Meera and Anjali. Realizing the seriousness of the incident, the Jaipur police quickly deployed an investigation team to the scene. When the police reached Meera's house, they found all the doors and windows locked. No one answered when they knocked on the door. After a few minutes of warning without receiving any response, they decided to break the door to enter. What greeted them as soon as they entered shocked them. While the house was silent, dark, and the air was thick with the stench of blood and wounds. The small room where Arav and Kabir were held was located deep inside the house. When police broke down the door, they found the two children curled up on the floor, their bodies severely weakened. Arav was unconscious, his body covered in wounds, some of which were severely infected. Kabir, though conscious, was panic-stricken and unable to move. The floor around him was filthy, splattered with blood and traces of bizarre rituals. Meera and Anjali were arrested on the spot. Meera, in a daze, did not put up any resistance. She sat down, crying and muttering meaningless prayers. Anjali, on the other hand, remained coldly calm. She denied all the charges, asserting that what they did was to save the souls of Arav and Kabir. The two children were immediately taken to hospital in critical condition. Doctors confirmed that both were severely malnourished and had multiple injuries on their bodies from being burned and beaten. Arav needed emergency surgery to treat the deep cuts on his hand, the result of the sacrificial ritual that Anjali forced Meera to perform. Meanwhile, the police began an extensive investigation. They searched Meera's entire house and found a large amount of evidence, including ritual objects, handwritten notes from Anjali containing bizarre pagan inscriptions and strange drawings on the walls of the small room. All signs indicated that the cruel rituals had been going on for a long time. Anjali, during her initial interrogations, denied any wrongdoing. She claimed that she was a spiritual guide and that her actions were intended to protect the two children from supernatural forces. However, evidence from Rajesh's surveillance camera and Kabir's weak but truthful testimony exposed the truth. Kabir, after receiving treatment and intensive care, gradually recovered and was able to recount some of what had happened. He spoke of the terrifying rituals, the constant hunger, and the times he witnessed his brother Arav being tortured. Kabir's testimony, though fragmented and filled with fear, was powerful evidence against both Anjali and Meera. As the evidence piled up, Anjali finally confessed. In her confession, she said that she approached Meera with the intention of exploiting her from the beginning. She pretended to be a trusted friend, gradually instilling superstitious beliefs to control Meera's mind. Anjali calls herself a spiritual guide but is actually a con artist who uses cults to justify her cruel acts. She admits that all the rituals have no real meaning other than to consolidate her power over Meera. Anjali took advantage of Meera's weakness and vulnerability after years of abuse, turning Meera into a tool to carry out her horrific acts. But as for Meera, she suffered a severe mental breakdown. During interrogations, Meera cried repeatedly and expressed remorse. She said that she had trusted Anjali completely, to the point where she could no longer tell right from wrong. Meera believed that everything she did was to protect her child, but she did not realize that her actions were putting Arav and Kabir in great pain. During an interrogation, Meera sobbed, "I just wanted to save my children. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't realize. I was so blind." These words, though true, do not lessen Meera's responsibility for the incident. She allowed Anjali's manipulations to turn her into the tormentor of the very children she once loved the most. For their heinous crimes, Meera Varma and Anjali Kapoor were brought to trial in a court in Jaipur in late 2007. This event attracted great public attention due to the horrific nature of the case. The prosecution presented incontrovertible evidence, including CCTV footage from Raja Sharma, Kabir's testimony, and medical reports describing the exhaustion and severe injuries on Arav and Kabir's bodies. The prosecution insisted that Anjali was the mastermind, taking advantage of Meera's superstition and mental instability to commit barbaric acts in the name of purification. Meera, despite being manipulated, was held accountable before the law for what she had done to her own children. In her testimony, Meera cried and expressed remorse. She admitted that she had been completely controlled by Anjali, to the point where she had lost the ability to distinguish right from wrong. Meanwhile, Anjali kept a cool demeanor, only confessing when there was no way to deny it. The court sentenced Anjali Kapoor to life in prison for intentional torture of a child, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. Meera Varma was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with the mitigating factor of psychological manipulation considered. Arav and Kabir were transferred to a child welfare center for treatment. The closure of the case is not only a family tragedy but also a warning about the dangers of superstition and psychological manipulators. Story 5. In 2014, in the city of Jaipur, Rajasthan, a family of 4 suddenly disappeared without a trace, leaving the local community in a state of confusion and fear. The house where they lived, once a symbol of peace and happiness, became the center of suspicion and mystery. Strange signs and rumors began to spread, leading to a dramatic investigation. Although all the clues seemed to lead to the truth, the story behind this disappearance still makes people shudder when mentioned. Arti Sharma, born in 1981 in Jaipur, grew up in a well-off family. Since childhood, she has lived in a well-off environment, was well cared for by her parents and always encouraged to develop herself. The atmosphere in Arti's family was always filled with warmth but also strictness, training her in discipline and self-respect from a very early age. Arti not only possesses a natural gentleness, but also exudes maturity that makes others easily trust her. A delicate face with deep eyes, exuding a calm look, is the image that people around often associate with her when talking about her. In conversations, Arti is always calm, knows how to listen and only speaks when necessary. She never shows off or tries to impress, but it is that sincerity that makes Arti win the sympathy of friends and people around. But in 2005, it marked a big turning point in Arti Sharma's life. At a family wedding, amidst the hustle and bustle and laughter, she met a man named Rajesh Sharma. Rajesh, born in 1979, is a talented chef and owner of a small but very famous restaurant in Jaipur. He is not the showy type, but his warmth and sincere smile quickly caught Arti's attention. Initially, their meeting was very natural. Rajesh, in the role of a caterer at the wedding, humorously introduced the dishes he had prepared himself. Arti, who loves simple but sophisticated things, was immediately impressed by his ingenuity and sense of humor. Later, the two happened to chat and Rajesh told Arti about his passion for cooking since childhood. Rajesh is not only a good chef but also a hard-working and determined man. He built the restaurant from scratch, always putting his heart into each dish. Meanwhile, Arti, with her gentleness and delicate way of speaking, made Rajesh feel comfortable and at ease. Every moment spent together, they realized that the harmony in their souls and values brought them closer together. So their relationship started with simple but fun-filled dates. Rajesh often took Arti to his restaurant, where he not only cooked special dishes but also told her the stories behind each dish. Arti felt Rajesh's love and devotion, not only in his work but also in the way he cared for her. In turn, Arti, with her poise and thoughtfulness, became the soulmate that Rajesh had always been looking for. After just a year of dating, on a special evening in 2006, Rajesh decided to propose to Arti. It was a moment that both of them would never forget. Rajesh had prepared a romantic dinner at his restaurant, where he lit up the space with flickering candles and decorated the table with fresh flowers that Arti loved. When the meal was over, Rajesh suddenly got down on one knee, holding a small but meaningful ring. Arti, completely surprised and moved, nodded in agreement without thinking. Their wedding was held at the end of 2006 in a cozy and simple atmosphere. Not lavish, but every detail was carefully prepared with the participation of both families. Arti was dressed in a traditional red sari, her face radiant, while Rajesh was dressed in a simple suit but exuded confidence and happiness. The sacred rituals took place under the witness of relatives and close friends, creating an intimate and emotional atmosphere. Laughter and blessings filled the air throughout the ceremony. The wedding food, prepared by the chefs at Rajesh's restaurant, was a hit. Arti and Rajesh, holding hands, smiled at each other, clearly feeling that they were embarking on a new journey filled with hope and love. The wedding ended on a happy note. As they bid their guests farewell, both of them could not hide the happiness that was evident on their faces. Arti in her heart knew that she had found a man she could rely on for the rest of her life. Rajesh, on the other hand, felt lucky to have a partner who understood and was always there for him. After getting married in 2006, Arti and Rajesh Sharma started their family life in Arti's inherited house in Jaipur. The house was not very big but cozy and well furnished. It holds fond memories of Arti's childhood and now serves as a home for her and Rajesh's small family. The first year of their marriage was spent in harmony and happiness. Rajesh continued his restaurant business while Arti spent her time taking care of the family, supporting her husband when needed and maintaining the family atmosphere. The couple was blessed with great joy in 2007 when Arti gave birth to their first son, Arav. Arav's birth brought more joy to the small house. Rajesh, despite his busy work schedule, always made time to care for and play with his son. Arti, with her caring nature, devotedly took care of Arav's every meal and sleep. The boys' giggles filled the house with life. Arti and Rajesh felt complete happiness when they became parents for the first time. 4 years later, in 2011, the small family welcomed a new member, Kabir, their second son. With the arrival of Kabir, Arti and Rajesh's lives became busier but also filled with joy. Arav, then 4 years old, happily accepted the role of big brother, always clinging to Kabir. The two children, with the love and guidance of their parents, grew up in an environment filled with warmth. The family of 4 lived in harmony and peace in the inherited house for many years. Rajesh and Arti always tried to bring up their children in the best way, teaching them about love, respect, and the value of work. Arav and Kabir, despite being a few years apart in age, were very close and always accompanied each other in all their games. Rajesh often said that for him, life was all about seeing his wife and 2 children smile every day. However, that peace did not last forever. In 2014, trouble began to break out when Arti's brother, Manish Gupta, returned from an 8-year prison sentence for robbery. Manish was a man in his 30s, with a face marked by the harsh years of imprisonment. He had been a close brother to Arti, but his past misdeeds had created a huge gap between the two. When Manish returned, he brought not only trouble, but also a request that took Arti and Rajesh by surprise. He wanted to share the ownership of the inherited house. Manish argued that, as a member of the family, he had a right to a share of the property. Manish's request immediately caused tension in the family. Arti, who has always treasured the house as part of her childhood memories, cannot accept sharing it with her brother, who has just been released from prison. She believes that Manish does not really care about the sentimental value of the house, but only sees it as an asset to solve financial difficulties. Rajesh, in the role of husband, tries to reconcile and find ways to protect the peace of his family, but cannot avoid heated arguments with Manish. Manish, who is stubborn and impatient, does not hesitate to threaten to take the matter to the law if Arti and Rajesh do not meet his demands. His presence in the house creates a tense atmosphere. Arav and Kabir, even though they are young, also feel the insecurity from the arguments between the adults. Arti, caught in a dilemma, has to face pressure from Manish while protecting her small family. She repeatedly reminds her brother that this house is a gift from their parents, not something to be fought over. But Manish, with the years of change in prison, is no longer the brother she once knew, but now a hot-tempered and violent man. Manish Gupta, with years of pent-up greed and resentment, became increasingly aggressive and threatening towards Arti and Rajesh. In the early days of his return from prison, he used only words to pressure them, demanding that the inherited house be sold to divide the money. But when he faced strong opposition from his sister and brother-in-law, Manish began to lose control. One day, Manish appeared with an angry face, loudly threatening that if Arti and Rajesh did not agree to sell the house, he would not leave their family alone. He often shouted and even smashed things in the yard, making not only the Sharma family but also the neighbors feel insecure. The conflict culminated one evening in early March 2014. In a fit of anger, Manish took a large axe to Arti's house. In front of Arav and Kabir, he loudly threatened, vowing to settle everything with this axe if Arti did not comply with his demands. Arti, though terrified, tried to remain calm to protect her children. She convinced Manish that her family needed time to think, but that only made him angrier. After this incident, Arti and Rajesh realized that the situation had spiraled out of control. Rajesh advised his wife to report the matter to the police, but Arti was hesitant, fearing that it would escalate the situation and lead to undesirable consequences. The two decided to try one more time to talk to Manish, hoping that he would calm down. However, on March 5, 2014, tragedy struck. That morning, Rajesh left home early to go to the restaurant as usual, while Artie stayed home with Arav and Kabir. Around noon, Manish suddenly showed up at home in an agitated state. He continued to demand the sale of the house. But when Artie refused, Manish lost control completely. He shouted, smashed furniture, and threw chairs against the wall. This time, Manish's aggression did not stop at words. He picked up his familiar axe and slammed it down on the table, causing Artie and the two children to panic. Arav and Kabir, having never seen such a terrifying sight before, cowered behind their mother. Artie, trying to stay calm, retreated into the living room to find a way out of the dangerous situation. She quickly called Rajesh, her voice trembling and urgent. Come home now, Manish. He is out of control. I am scared. Rajesh, sensing the panic in his wife's voice, immediately left the restaurant and ran home. But that was the last time anyone had contact with the Sharma family. Neighbors said that in the early afternoon, they heard screams and the sound of things being smashed coming from Artie's house. Some tried to go and investigate, but hesitated because of Manish's aggressive nature. Others thought it was just a family argument. When Rajesh returned home, his motorbike was seen parked outside. The gate was ajar, but no one saw Rajesh enter or leave. Some neighbors even claimed they heard the argument getting louder, followed by an unnatural silence that fell over the house. By evening, the lights inside the house were not on as usual. There was no laughter from children, no sign of Artie or Rajesh. The house was shrouded in an eerie silence. Neighbors began to worry, but no one had the courage to knock on the door, afraid of confronting Manish. The next day, the Sharma family home was unusually quiet. Neighbors noticed no activity as usual. Rajesh did not show up at the restaurant, which was unusual for him, as he always showed up early in the morning to prepare for a busy day at work. Artie also did not send Arav and Kabir to school, although they always left on time. The silence made the neighbors feel uneasy. Some people tried calling Rajesh and Artie, but no one answered. The gate of the house was still locked. The second-floor windows were closed since the previous day. There was no sign of the Sharma family inside. Meanwhile, in the morning, Manish suddenly appeared at Rajesh's restaurant. With a calm expression, he told the staff that Rajesh had been arrested by the police after a serious accident and would not be able to return to work for a while. The announcement stunned everyone, but no one suspected anything because of Manish's determination. Manish's suspicious behavior continued in the following days. Just hours after announcing the fake arrest, he drove the Sharma family car to a local junkyard. There, Manish sold the car for a pittance, not caring about its true value. People who worked at the scrapyard said that Manish appeared to be in a hurry and did not want to attract attention. The shady dealings did not stop there. Manish approached a real estate broker and forged Artie's signature on legal documents to sell the inherited house. He claimed that Artie and Rajesh had moved away and needed to sell the house immediately to settle financial issues. The haste and lack of transparency in the transaction aroused suspicion from some, but no one dared to question him because Manish was always aggressive. Meanwhile, the Sharma's neighbors grew increasingly worried when there was no news from Artie or Rajesh. One decided to knock on the door in the evening, but no one answered. A sense of unease set in when people realized that no lights were on inside the house, even after dark. Neighbors' fears quickly spread as a few people pieced together the unusual details: the unexplained disappearance of the Sharma family, Manish's strange actions, and Rajesh's car being sold at the scrapyard. Everything led to the terrifying conclusion that something was terribly wrong. After the house was sold, the new owners discovered some strange and disturbing details. The kitchen floor had been completely torn away, with no trace of the original tiles or wood floors. In its place was a new layer of concrete poured haphazardly, as if to conceal something. The first-floor bathroom had been completely repainted red, a color choice that was not only unusual but also associated with blood and violence. The new owners, feeling uneasy, asked their neighbors about the previous residents. The neighbor, who had not seen the Sharmas for months, quickly reported the matter to the police. The Sharma's strange disappearance had finally attracted the attention it needed. The investigation team was immediately involved, and the old house, now cold and deserted, became the scene of a thorough search. When they first entered the house, the police were struck by the strange orderliness of the ground floor. The living room was clean, without a speck of dust on the furniture, as if intentionally creating a sense of nothing unusual. But this orderliness was exactly what made the investigators suspicious. The family photos on the TV stand were gone, leaving only a faint trace of dust where they had been. The kitchen, where the floor had been completely renovated, showed no signs of life. Everything was neatly arranged, but a faint chemical smell lingered in the air, as if something had been scrubbed very hard. The new concrete had been laid unevenly, and there were a few small cracks in the surface, adding to the suspicion. The police moved up to the second floor, where things began to get more sinister. The master bedroom, where ART and Rajesh had slept, looked like it had been the scene of a violent struggle. Drawers had been flung open, and items had been pulled out and strewn about. One of the pillows on the bed had dried blood seeping through the fabric, leaving a haunting dark brown stain. What the investigators couldn't miss was the trail of blood that ran from the bed, across the soft carpet, and out into the hallway. The trail stopped abruptly at the top of the stairs, as if someone had tried to cover it up or clean it up. But the presence of the bloodstain still told of something terrible happening there. In the bedroom of the two children, Arav and Kabir, the signs of a disturbance were more obvious. Toys were scattered, and some of the children's drawings on the wall were torn. A family photograph, cracked and bloody, lay haphazardly on the floor. The air in the room was filled with an uneasy feeling, as if time had stopped for a terrible moment. When the door to the basement was opened, a strong stench hit the investigators, forcing them to cover their mouths and noses. The stairs leading down to the basement appeared to have been used infrequently, with a thick layer of dust on the banisters and steps. By flashlight, they found the basement littered with rotten wood and old objects. In the darkest corner of the basement, the investigators found old cloths, tightly wrapped as if to hide something. As each cloth was removed, horrifying images emerged the bodies of the Sharma family. Arti Rajesh, Arav and Kabir were brutally murdered. The fatal injuries on their bodies suggested that they had been subjected to an attack of unimaginable violence. The murder weapon found not far from the bodies was an axe, covered in dried blood and with cracks in the wooden handle. This was the axe that Manish, the strange neighbor, used to carry when he went into the woods to chop wood. This discovery immediately drew the attention of the investigating team. Investigators realized that the basement was not the scene of the murders, but only the place where the bodies were hidden. Bloodstains and other signs on the second floor suggested that the victims had been murdered in their rooms. But why Manish, if he was the killer, chose the basement to hide the bodies remains a big question. The rotten wood used to cover the bodies suggests a hasty attempt to cover up the traces. There was no sign that the house had ever been thoroughly cleaned, except for the ground floor, which had clearly been set up to fool anyone entering for the first time. The neighbor who reported the incident said that Manish had a history of strange behavior. He frequently entered and exited the Sharma house at night, carrying large bags of items whose contents no one knew. He was also found arguing with Rajesh over unpaid loans. Forensic records from the bodies showed that the family died shortly before the house was sold, which coincided with the time when the Sharma suddenly disappeared without a trace. The murder weapon, traces of blood, and Manish's suspicious behavior gradually made him the prime suspect in the case. What puzzled the police, however, was how he handled everything. The house was poorly renovated. The bathroom was repainted red in an obsessive act, and the body was hidden in the basement in a state of incomplete concealment. It seemed that the killer wanted to both cover his tracks and leave clues as a challenge. Police immediately issued a nationwide arrest warrant for Manish Gupta. His shady actions, from hastily selling the car to forging documents to sell the Sharma family home, all point to Manish's close involvement in the gruesome murder. He mysteriously disappeared as soon as the secrets of the house were exposed, causing all eyes to be on him. The search for Manish lasted for 2 weeks, with many clues leading the police to remote locations on the outskirts of Jaipur. During this time, the police received many statements from Manish's acquaintances and neighbors, but the information was very vague. Some people said that Manish had been acting strangely recently, like he was afraid of something, often avoiding people, and sometimes even speaking incoherently. Finally, early one morning Manish was arrested in a remote forest area outside Jaipur. He was hiding in a makeshift tent, living off food stolen from nearby farms. When the police surrounded him, Manish did not resist, but silently put his hands up and was handcuffed. His face was gaunt, his hair disheveled, and his eyes dull as if he hadn't slept in days. During a search of the hideout, the police discovered a few interesting items: a broken cell phone, some old clothes covered in dirt, and a small notebook with several pages torn out. Manish said nothing when he was taken to the police station, only bowing his head. However, his silence only added to the tension in the investigation. At the police station, when questioned, Manish gave only evasive answers, repeatedly denying any involvement in the Sharma family's deaths. He admitted to forging the house sale documents but insisted that he had not killed them. "I just wanted the money. I don't know what happened to them," Manish said, his voice trembling. Forensics later confirmed that the blood found in the bedroom belonged to Rajesh, but the other traces were not enough to conclusively identify Manish as the killer. The blood was smeared, possibly by intentional wiping, making it difficult to reconstruct the scene. The axe found in the basement had Manish's fingerprints, but he claimed that it was a tool he had borrowed from Rajesh to chop wood. These statements, while plausible, left investigators with no way to clear their doubts. Manish was not arrested for murder, but for other charges including forgery and violating a previous probation order. He was remanded in custody while police continued to investigate for more evidence. On a cold December night in 2014, with the investigation still ongoing, Manish was found dead in his cell. His body was found early in the morning, hanging from a bunk bed by a piece of cloth torn from a blanket. On the table, police found a small, neatly folded note. In the letter, Manish wrote, "I can't continue living with this burden. Please forgive me. What happened to the Sharma family? I really didn't want it to end like this. I'm sorry." The apology in the letter only added to the mystery. Manish offered no explanation for what had happened, did not reveal the cause of death of the Sharma family, and did not mention anyone else who might have been involved. The police were left wondering whether Manish was the real killer or just a cog in a larger conspiracy. Manish's death immediately became a public sensation. Theories surrounding his death were woven in many different directions. Some believed that, trapped in solitude and overwhelmed by guilt, Manish sought death as a final release. However, many believed that this could have been a premeditated murder. They suspected that Manish, perhaps because he held too many secrets, had become a target of those behind the case. The indifference of Manish's family to his death only fueled the speculation. Their refusal to accept the body not only reflected a previous severance of contact, but also left a cold impression of the man. Manish seemed to have become a lost cause even in his final moments. For investigators, Manish's death was a huge setback. They believed that he was the most important link in solving the mystery of the Sharma family massacre. The letter he left behind, with its ambiguous content, not only did not provide any more clues but also added to the confusion. The inability to hold a trial to investigate further left investigators at a standstill. When the case was reported in the press, the public was outraged. The inability of the legal system to track down the perpetrator, despite having clear clues, became the focus of criticism. Public opinion condemned the ineffectiveness of the investigation process and demanded reforms so that similar cases would no longer be left unsolved. However, despite all the pressure from public opinion, the case was officially closed, leaving unanswered questions and an unending haunting in the hearts of the people. Story 6. Nothing hurts more than betrayal from the person you trust the most. In marriage, love is built on a foundation of trust and loyalty. But when betrayal creeps in, it not only breaks hearts, but sometimes ignites uncontrollable anger and hatred. In Hamburg, Germany, on a fateful night in February 2015, a horrific crime occurred, stemming from that very betrayal. A cheating wife, a husband who discovered the secret, and a cold-blooded revenge plan that shook the entire country. When a freight train rumbled through the deserted suburbs at high speed, it carried a horrifying secret. On the isolated railway line, a woman's body was dismembered into many pieces. This is not just a story about adultery, but also a haunting warning when trust is broken. The consequences can be far beyond what we can imagine. What really happened that fateful night, and what turned a husband into a cold-blooded killer? Join us as we uncover the dark secrets of this case. Johann Müller was born on March 15, 1973, in Hamburg, Germany. An experienced mechanical engineer, Johann has spent most of his career in the maintenance and operation of industrial machinery. He was a dedicated worker, frequently traveling to major cities across Germany and Europe. These trips, although providing a steady income for his family, kept him away from his home. Johann married Clara Müller in 2002, and the couple quickly built a happy life in the suburbs of Hamburg. They have 2 young children, and Johann is described by neighbors as a gentle husband and devoted father who strives to provide a comfortable life for his family. Johann's calm, unpretentious personality makes him a person the community trusts and respects. In the eyes of his friends and colleagues, he is the ideal model of a family man. The victim in this case was Clara Müller, NIE Clara Fischer, born on June 12, 1977, in Hamburg, Germany. She grew up in a well-educated middle-class family and was noted for her sociable personality and good looks. Clara married Johann Müller in 2002, when she was 25, and the couple quickly built a family in a quiet suburb of Hamburg. Initially, Clara worked as an administrator in a small company, but after the birth of her first child, she decided to put her career on hold to focus on raising her family. With 2 young children, Clara was known to her neighbors and friends as a devoted, caring mother. However, family life, with its heavy responsibilities and Johann's frequent absences due to work, left Clara feeling isolated. In recent years, Clara has started to return to work, working part-time at a cafe and attending more social events. She has become more concerned about her appearance and has devoted more time to new relationships. It was during this period that Clara met Andreas Klein, a young and successful businessman who brought her the attention and feeling she thought she had lost during her marriage of more than a decade. Andreas Klein, born in 1980 in Hamburg, Germany, is a young and successful businessman. As the owner of a chain of high-end fashion stores, Andreas is known for his elegant appearance, charming personality, and skillful communication skills. He often appears at social events and is considered a charismatic person in the business world. Andreas met Clara Müller at a social event in late 2014. Their relationship quickly went beyond the usual limits, turning into an affair behind Johann Müller's back. The relationship between Clara Müller and Andreas Klein was carried out in complete secrecy, carefully hidden from the notice of her husband, Johann Müller. They met regularly in a small, rented apartment in the center of Hamburg, which became a temporary nest for their secret afternoons. Their rendezvous often took place when Johann was away on long business trips, with Clara carefully arranging them to avoid detection. Andreas, with his experience intact, parked his car far away from the apartment so as not to arouse suspicion. Clara also used work meetings or meetings with friends as an excuse to spend time with her lover. In this apartment, Clara found the excitement and novelty that she thought had been lost in her marriage of more than a decade. For Andreas, the encounters were short-term gratification, no strings attached, no responsibility. However, they did not know that each time they walked through the door of that apartment, they were getting closer to a devastating end. Johann Müller began to notice changes in his wife Clara around the end of 2014. As a caring husband, Johann quickly noticed something different in Clara's behavior, even though she tried to hide it. At first, the signs were small, like Clara spending more time on herself, constantly grooming herself, buying new clothes and experimenting with makeup styles she had previously neglected. Johann also noticed that she was increasingly interested in social gatherings, citing work development as the reason. What made Johann most suspicious was that Clara was increasingly protective of her phone. She kept it with her at all times, changed the password, and quickly hid it away whenever a message came in. In the evenings, Clara seemed to avoid conversations, became less interested in Johann, and often used fatigue as an excuse to avoid intimate moments. Despite his unease, Johann initially assumed that perhaps Clara was just going through a stressful time, but as these behaviors became more and more apparent and repetitive, he began to suspect that he was not the only one in her life. Clara's change in attitude is the trigger for Johann's suppressed anger, leading him to decide to follow her, only to discover a truth even more painful than he could have imagined. On February 10, 2015, while Clara was out of the room and had left her phone on the table, Johann suddenly decided to check her device, something he had never done before. What he discovered immediately turned his world upside down. Clara's phone was filled with intimate text messages between her and Andreas Klein. The messages revealed that the relationship between Clara and Andreas had lasted for more than 6 months, with regular secret meetings taking place in a rented apartment in central Hamburg. The text messages not only confirmed the affair but also revealed the intimacy, the deep affection, and the future plans that Clara and Andreas had drawn up. Each loving word in the text messages cut deep into Johann's self-esteem and trust. However, Johann did not react immediately. He decided to remain silent, but began to observe Clara's every move with cold alertness. To strengthen his suspicions, Johann hired a professional private detective tasked with following Clara and providing clear evidence of this relationship. Over the course of several days, the detectives collected a series of photos and videos that showed Clara regularly meeting Andreas at the secret apartment, where the two spent many hours together. The image of Clara entering the apartment with Andreas, along with the unmistakable intimate gestures, became the definitive proof of the betrayal. From the detective's report, Johann learned that this relationship was not just a passing one, but had lasted long enough to become a part of Clara's life. Holding the photos in his hands, Johann was no longer the calm and devoted man he had been. The anger that had been simmering inside him began to flare. But instead of facing it immediately, Johann chose to plan, step by step, to prepare for his brutal revenge at around 5:30 p.m. On February 17, 2015, Clara Muller returned home as usual after working at the cafe. Johann Muller, preparing a simple dinner, maintained a calm demeanor as if everything was normal. But inside, Johann was burning with anger and pain from the days of pent-up anger. After dinner, Johann asked Clara to go into the garage to talk privately, saying he wanted to discuss a family matter. Clara, not noticing anything unusual, followed him. At around 18 in the garage, as Clara entered, Johann suddenly attacked her from behind. He used a rope that he had prepared earlier to tie her hands and feet. Clara tried to resist and beg, but Johann quickly stuffed a rag into her mouth to prevent her from screaming for help. His eyes were cold, devoid of any emotion of the husband who once loved her. After tying Clara up tightly, Johann dragged her out to the car and placed her in the trunk of his car. He slammed the trunk shut, leaving Clara in the suffocating darkness and hopeless silence. Then Johann started the car and drove towards the outskirts of Hamburg, heading towards an abandoned railway area he had chosen in advance. Johann stopped the car at a remote railway station, near an old, defunct signal station. It was completely silent, except for the sound of the wind whistling through the abandoned cars. Johann pulled Clara out of the trunk and dragged her to the tracks. He then showed her all the photos and messages between Clara and her lover, without giving her a chance to explain. He then used rope to tie Clara's body tightly to the rail, making sure she couldn't struggle or escape. Clara cried and struggled, but all her efforts were in vain. Johann completely ignored the muffled cries from her gag, his eyes blank, focused on the plan he was carrying out. After finishing tying Clara up, Johann pulled out the camera he had brought with him, positioning it at the best angle to record the whole scene. The small camera recorded Clara, who was completely helpless as she faced the terrible fate she could not escape. A few minutes later, the deafening sound of a freight train rang out in the distance. The headlights from the locomotive illuminated the tracks, casting a sickening white light on Clara's bound body. Johann stood a few meters away, watching calmly. Clara panicked, struggling in vain as the train approached at high speed. Johann could not take his eyes off the scene. There was a terrible crash as the train passed by. Clara's body was cut apart, killing her instantly. Johann stood still, not a single emotion wavering. The whole thing was captured on video, from the screech of the train wheels on the tracks to the last image of Clara. After the train passed, Johann took out his camera, checked the recorded video, and posted it on social media with the caption, "The End of Betrayal." After this brutal act, Johann got into his car and left the scene, after leaving the railway line where Clara Muller died under the train wheels. Johann Muller continued his cruel revenge. He drove straight to the center of Hamburg, where Andreas Klein, Clara's lover, lived in a luxurious apartment on the third floor of a building. Johann parked the car in a secluded corner away from the building, carrying the pistol he had illegally purchased on the black market a few weeks ago. When Andreas opened the door, he was completely surprised by Johann's appearance. He didn't have time to say a word, because Johann immediately raised his gun and fired 3 shots into his chest. The gunshot rang out loudly, breaking the silence of the hallway. Andreas collapsed in the doorway, blood pooling on the light wooden floor. His body convulsed for a few seconds before he became completely still. Andreas's wide eyes lost their sparkle, leaving only a look of shock and final panic. Johann stood still for a few seconds, looking at the motionless body of the man he considered the one who ruined his marriage, then turned and left the scene. At 19:30 on February 17, 2015, a video of Clara Muller being tied up on the railway tracks and run over by a train was posted on a social media platform. The shocking video quickly attracted the attention of netizens and was reported to the Hamburg police. The police were able to locate the railway track where the incident occurred thanks to the information in the video. A police team was quickly dispatched to the scene, a desolate stretch of railway track near an old signal station on the outskirts of Hamburg. There they discovered what remained of Clara Muller body parts scattered along the tracks, and a rope still stained with blood tied to the rails. But the evidence clearly showed that the crime had been carefully staged. As police cordoned off the scene and collected evidence, they received another urgent call of murder in central Hamburg, where Andreas Klein had just been shot dead in his apartment. At the scene of Andreas Klein's apartment, police found the victim's body lying at the entrance, with 3 bullet wounds in the chest. Blood was flowing from the doorway into the apartment. The shooting caused panic among many residents in the building, and some witnesses were able to call the police. Through initial witness testimony, police learned that a man resembling Johann Muller had been seen at the building shortly before the incident. This identity matched the information provided in the horrific video earlier. From the 2 crime scenes, the police quickly realized that the 2 cases were related and that Johann Muller was the prime suspect. A nationwide arrest warrant was issued, along with a warning that Johann could be armed and extremely dangerous. Patrols were deployed along routes out of Hamburg, while investigators tried to trace Johann through traffic networks and security camera surveillance. Johann Muller's name immediately became the focus of emergency news reports on German media channels, with detailed descriptions of his appearance and the car he used to escape. After issuing a nationwide arrest warrant, German police launched a large-scale manhunt to capture Johann Muller, the prime suspect in 2 shocking murders that occurred on February 17, 2015. Patrols were deployed on major roads and border checkpoints, and police used traffic surveillance equipment to track the car Johann used to escape. Police in Hamburg detected Johann's car traveling eastward, approaching the German-Polished border, using traffic cameras. This information was passed to the border police, and a checkpoint on a main road near Frankfurt and Dieroder, a few kilometers from the border, was designated as a checkpoint. At the checkpoint, police had set up barricades and were fully prepared. Officers were armed and wearing bulletproof vests, ready to deal with Johann, who was identified as carrying a gun and could be dangerous. Johann Muller's car, a silver sedan, was spotted entering the checkpoint. As the car slowed down to pass through, officers immediately recognized the man behind the wheel as Johann Muller, matching the description on the wanted poster. Johann did not resist as the officers surrounded the car, guns drawn, and ordered him to get out. He got out of the car calmly, without saying a word. On Johann, police found the pistol he used to kill Andreas Klein, along with some personal belongings and a phone containing a video recording of Clara Muller's death. After handcuffing Johann, the police took him to the border station for preliminary questioning. Throughout the arrest, Johann remained silent, showing no signs of panic or resistance. His eyes were cold and emotionless, leading the officers to conclude that this was a man completely obsessed with his plan for revenge. Johann Müller was escorted back to Hamburg that same day, marking the end of one of the most intense criminal manhunts in Germany at the time. Johann's arrest received great media attention, as the two murders he had committed had left a deep impression on the public. At the Hamburg police station, faced with clear evidence from the video and witness statements, Johann admitted to all his crimes. He recounted in detail each step of his plan and the reasons that led him to such a cruel act. Johann began by recounting the subtle changes in Clara's behavior that he had noticed over the past few months. The distance, the vague excuses, and especially the overprotectiveness of her phone made him suspicious. When Johann discovers intimate text messages between Clara and Andreas, he realizes that his wife has been cheating on him for months. Their secret relationship was not just casual, but carefully planned, with meetings in a rented apartment in the center of Hamburg. This discovery left Johann haunted. He described feeling as if all his trust and love for his family had been destroyed. Johann no longer felt he could go on living without doing something to punish the two people he felt had ruined his life. Regarding the murder, Johann said that on February 17th, he planned it in cold and detailed detail. He lured Clara under the pretext of discussing family matters. There, he tied her up with rope and took her to an abandoned railway track in the suburbs. After tying Clara tightly to the tracks, Johann set up a camera to record the entire scene. He gave Clara no chance to escape her fate, watching as the train rushed towards her and ended her life. Johann did not stop there. After leaving the scene, he continued driving to Andreas Klein's apartment. There, Johann used the pistol he had prepared in advance to shoot Andreas 3 times right at the door, ending the life of the man he considered the main cause of his family's downfall. Johann described that throughout the act, he did not feel any hesitation or remorse. Every action was done in a calculated manner, in order to bring about the justice he thought he deserved. The police recorded Johann's testimony with the cold and meticulousness with which he recounted every detail of the case. This was not only a carefully planned murder, but also a series of actions carried out with astonishing cruelty and inhumanity. That what Johann recounts at the police station sheds light on a shocking murder case where betrayal, hatred, and feelings of betrayal turned an ordinary man into a cold-blooded killer. On July 15, 2016, after more than a year of investigation and preparation of documents, the trial of Johann Müller took place at the Hamburg City Court. This was one of the cases that attracted the most attention from the German public at that time, due to the brutal nature and complex motives behind the crime. Johann Müller was convicted of 2 counts of murder. Evidence from home videos, witness testimony, and investigative documents showed that Johann had planned in detail and brutally murdered his wife, Clara Müller, by tying her to the railway tracks and murdered Andreas Klein with a gun in the victim's apartment. The court concluded that Johann's actions were deliberate, cold, and unjustifiable, despite the psychological impact of his wife's betrayal. Johann was sentenced to life in prison without parole and ordered to undergo mandatory psychiatric treatment while in prison. As the verdict was read, Johann remained calm, showing no resistance or remorse, bringing to a close a case that shocked Germany. After following this case in detail, what do you think about Johann Müller's actions? Was it a deserved revenge or an unforgivable crime? As the rain falls and the night deepens, thank you for being here with me at Radio Night Crime. True crime stories remind us of life's mysteries and the need to stay aware, even in the stillness of the night. If you enjoyed tonight's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let the sound of the rain lull you to sleep, and until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and let the night keep you company.